Alright, today we're going to be going over the specializations in the game, and we're going to be talking about them all together rather than individually. I do find often when it comes to building a team composition, it's not always just HML, right? So there are times where you might be having double heavy, double medium, double light, maybe even triple medium, triple heavy, whatever it is. I think there are certain times when you might want to combo certain specializations and not necessarily like you need to have one from this class and one from that class. So I think it's a lot more intuitive to put them all together. Also, since there is only 3 to 4 on each class, it could be a pretty boring tier list. So putting them all together actually compares them directly. So let's get into light first, then we'll get into medium, and then heavy last. So the first one is Cloaking Device, which we're going to put into A tier. Now, in terms of all of the specializations, I do think Cloaking Device is not the best, but in terms of the light specializations, it is fantastic, and it does a lot for the class. You can also use it with most things on the class besides melee, obviously, but I find melee and maybe even bow don't fully work the best with Cloaking Device, and on top of that, they're not really meta picks anyway. So when it comes to using the meta picks such as the XP, the M11, the LH1 for sure, even the M26, Cloaking Device is very good. Now I find this is a lot better when it comes to high elo and ranked, because the lower elo you go, people don't understand movement and positioning. But if you understand positioning, if you understand the job of scouting, then Cloaking Device just does that perfectly. Being able to spot people from afar, relay that information to your teammates is really, really vital. And the thing is, a lot of people don't understand how Cloaking Device works. This doesn't mean you just pop it and then you're invis and you can just roam around a room and you're free to do that. No. You need to position in a good spot where you are outside of that radius where people can actually spot you, and then you basically do become completely invisible. Also understanding that the faster you move or the slower you move, the more noise you make and the more invisible you are. Depending on the situation, it's actually really good to just stand still. Somebody, even like a whole team, could walk right by you just standing still and not even be able to spot you. However, people with good eyes might be able to spot you standing still, but if you are in a chaotic situation, they might not be looking for it. So take that with a grain of salt. But if you have fantastic positioning, if you understand the game really well, then Cloaking Device is really good. But we're going to get into the next one, which is Evasive Dash. It's going to be in C tier. Now, I like using Evasive Dash and does combo quite well with a lot of the weapons that I like the bow, for example. And it is pretty good with melee weapons. The one thing about Evasive Dash is that versus good players, typically you can kind of track this. There are plenty of situations where, getting into one window and out the other, moving around buildings, making sure that you don't fall off the map. There are plenty of use cases for Evasive Dash. And I do find for people who are not the most experienced at the game, Evasive Dash can be pretty dang good for compensating for bad movement, or if you just get into a sticky situation, getting out of it really quickly. So if you do have really good movement, really good positioning, and you not end up in the middle of a room surrounded by a bunch of people, then Cloaking Device works a lot better. But Evasive Dash, like I said, if you make a mistake and you end up in the bad spot, Evasive Dash can help get you out of it. So in terms of being able to be useful for the team and fully utilizing everything in your kit, Cloaking Device just does it better. But Evasive Dash is a pretty solid choice if you are still learning the class or if you want to pair it with certain things. I overall do prefer using Dash in a lot of situations simply because I find it more fun, but I fully understand that Cloaking Device is the better pick. Now, the reason why it's on C versus A or B or something like that is simply because light in general doesn't bring a lot to the team for their specializations, so unfortunately they kind of get ranked a little bit lower, but Cloaking Device allows you to position in ways that you can do more for your team. Now, Grappling Hook, I can actually put above the Evasive Dash in C tier, simply because we are in a plug meta right now, and the ability to just grab a cash box, grapple away, and then just plug it instantly is fantastic, and we can't really overlook how good this is in the plug meta currently. So purely for objective and what you can do for the team, the Grappling Hook just does a little bit more than Evasive Dash, and Evasive Dash can still kind of do that, but not quite as well. I think Evasive Dash sort of sits in between Cloaking Device and Grappling Hook in terms of how it's played. Grappling Hook is purely about map mobility, plugging, objective play. Cloaking Device is very much so about getting intel, scouting for the team, and setting up opportunities for you to win the fight. So Evasive Dash sort of plays in that middle where it is good for the fight, it is good for macro. So it feels like the balance of the two but I also feel like that is why it sort of sits a little bit behind in C tier, because for what it brings, there might be a better option to do it a little bit better. So like I said, don't feel afraid to use Evasive Dash or Grappling Hook. It really is up to you what you want to use. But in my eyes, this would be where things stand in terms of the light specializations. But as it stands in general, light specs just don't really bring too much to the team. Now on to medium, we have the Dematerializer. This is an S tier pick for me. I think Dematerializer is fantastic. It brings so much to the table. You can play for drop, you can kite with it, you can save your teammates, you can even grab trophies from below if they're a floor above. You might have died a room above, you can just drop them into your room. There are tons of plays you can do with jump pad, being able to jump pad through a ceiling. You can even drop people onto you if you know that they're above you. The skill gap for Dematerializer is so high that I do think, like, if you are just picking up the game and you start playing Dematerializer, it's going to be about a C, maybe even a D tier, because I feel like this takes so much brain power. But the people that I've seen master and utilize Dematerializer to its max, definitely an S tier gadget. Fantastic pick, and I would not shy away from it. Now we have the Guardian Turret. For me, D tier. It's very easy to counter. I actually bring a data reshaper in my reserves on most of my medium classes, just in case there is a crazy enemy team that decides to bring Guardian Turret. In high elo, these are basically non-existent unless we get into a lobby where some platinum player or a gold player or something managed to bring in their friend who is silver or bronze or something like that, and they think Guardian Turret is good because, ooh, free damage. But once we see this, it's so easy to shut down. We have glitch grenades, we have data reshaper if we really need to, but even then I just kind of ignore those. If you see it first and they are not standing on it, being able to shoot back at you right away, you can just easily take this thing out, and then boom, they have no specialization for the fight. So Guardian Turret is easily a D tier. I don't even think I'd want this thing buffed, because I think it's extremely frustrating for casual players because they don't really want to bring the things to counter it. They just want to play their own loadout. But even just pacing yourself a little bit, taking a little bit of a slower approach, like most high elo players do, they make sure to get the intel with scouting and stuff like that before going in. They can just make quick work of a Guardian Turret. Next, we have the Healing Beam. For me, this goes into A tier, and I would actually put it above Cloaking Device, because the Healing Beam is really good in certain situations, like when you have no lights on your team. So if you're double medium heavy, or if you're double heavy medium, having a heal beam is really, really nice, especially when you bring defibs, because once you revive somebody with defibs, they have the defib thickness, and realistically, it's just not that good to defib somebody if you're not going to heal them, or if you're not defibbing them in a situation like behind a wall or somewhere where they are safe. Because if you just get back up in the middle of a fight and you have no specs, you have no gadgets, nothing you can do, very often you're just going to die before you can do anything, especially if you don't even have bullets in your clip. So Healing Beam allows you to utilize defib a little bit better and save your teammates, especially when you have a double heavy team composition. Keeping them both alive, topped up, can be extremely, extremely useful. But it's not good in every single team comp. It's not good in every single situation, which is why it's not S tier, but it's still a fantastic pick. Now we're going to go on to Heavy. Heavy actually has some fantastic picks here, so this is going to be a little bit interesting. I think these definitely stack up a little bit better than the other classes. So when it comes to Charge and Slam, this is a B tier for me. Now, it's extremely frustrating. It's basically just like, oh, you point and click, just boom, dead. Like when somebody's up in your face, you just click this and they're dead, and it can be really, really annoying. But when it comes to competitive play, there's very few Charge and Slams I see, simply because other specializations are just a lot better. So even though this is kind of on the lower end of the heavy specs, it still sits in B, because honestly, a lot of these specializations are still fantastic. Heavy brings some of the best gadgets and some of the best specializations in the class, so a lot of these are going to be pretty high up. Next, we have Goo Gun. This is actually going to go behind Charge and Slam in B tier, simply because Charge and Slam is a little bit easier to use. I think Goo Gun has just insane potential. There are so many things that you can do with it. The one struggle that we see with it in high elo, at least in my opinion, is that you really need to keep up to date with it. Like, you have to constantly know all the tech. You have to constantly be in the mindset of how to use Goo Gun, because there's goo locking, there is cocooning, there's blocking off angles. There are so many different things you can do with it, even building bridges, it's for movement, even cash out manipulation. However, there are some bugs with the Goo Gun, and Sometimes when they patch certain things about Goo, it kind of inadvertently nerfs Goo Gun. So from time to time, like on certain patches, this might be like a C tier, but on certain patches, it might be like A tier. So I'm just kind of putting it here in B tier because depending on where it sits on the patch, Goo Gun still has some great uses. But like I said, it's one of those things that you just have to use all the time to fully understand and utilize. You can't be somebody who hops around from different gadget to different classes to different weapons, swapping around a bunch of stuff, and then hop on Goo Gun thinking that you're going to be able to fully utilize it. It is a full different mindset, so it is a little bit complicated. Cardinal Slam is a little bit easier, so that's kind of why I have them here. Next, we have Mesa Shield. Mesa Shield is actually going to be in A tier. Not only that, but I'm actually putting it at the top of A tier. And the reason I'm doing this is because the Mesa Shield, after the buff being able to sort of juggle it again, has been extremely useful for all of the mains that used to use Mesh back in the day. And my team also used to use this a lot. And now that it's kind of back with juggling, it's a little bit more in a balanced state than it used to be before. It used to be pretty broken. Basically, every single heavy used it. And then they ended up kind of over nerfing it to then Winch took over. But I think as it sits now, Mesa Shield is in a pretty balanced state. I think there could be some little tweaks that they could do to it that could help it out. But realistically, the Mesa Shield is a fantastic pick right now. And you could even bring 2 of them into the game or even just 1. But I think having 1 on your team can be very, very good. Next, we have Winch Claw. This is going to go into S tier. So we only have 2 S tiers. We have the Dematerializer and the Winch Claw. And the main reason that I think Winch Claw is fantastic right now is because of cash out manipulation. It is very, very easy to manipulate a cash out with Winch Claw. You can just pull it out of buildings, and you combo this with the Dematerializer. You can then pull it out of almost any building. You don't have to use C4 or explosive to blow up walls, blow out any cash out. You can combo this with jump pads to fling it up in the air. There are so many cool things that you can do with Winch Claw. But the idea of being able to pull something like the cash out into the open to then watch it from multiple different buildings, different angles, can be extremely good, especially in a meta where we have so many third parties and stuff. If a bunch of teams are trying to third party and fight over a cash out that is in the middle of nowhere, just out in the open with a bunch of people sitting in buildings with like LH1s, maybe even shacks, F cars, whatever, like it's kind of just GG. I don't really know what you can really do there. You just kind of have to chase out each individual kill, but with defender respawn, that means that you might be able to kill 1 because you could all play from different angles, or they just start kiting you. You kill 1, by the time you're trying to kill the second, the first one's already respawned on the defender coin, while the third one's just pegging you in the back with the LH1. The Winch Claw, I think purely for cash out manipulation is why it's so high. But even then, if you can just pull somebody in and instantly get a pick, like in final round, that is just GG. Being able to get that first pick in a 3v3 basically just means that you win. So I think Winch Claw is still the best heavy specialization. I think the only thing that could help bring it down is potentially making it so that it can't go through shields like Dome Shield and Mesh. I don't really know. I also am pretty happy with Dematerializer being in an S tier because I feel like it takes so much skill and so much knowledge to even fully utilize that I have no problem with it being an S tier pick. It is so entertaining to face. It's so entertaining to use. It's so entertaining to watch. I think it is one of the best designed specializations in the game. So that is my ranking for all of the gadgets. As you can see, a lot of the heavy specs sit a little bit higher. The light specs sit a little bit lower. And then the medium specs are a little bit over the place, but the Guardian turret obviously sits at the bottom. All right, thank you for watching my tier list on all of the specializations. The next one's going to be gadgets. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody out there. Be sure to have fun in the arena while you're on your holidays, and I will see you in the finals.
Nice. Another team here. Nice.